Hey guys, how's it going? It's Kyle here with another Genshin Impact video. In today's video, I want to break down how artifacts work and what stats you should be prioritizing and like what to look for, because I feel like the artifact system is pretty overwhelming at first, but the more I understood it, the more we could break it down in a pretty easy to understand way to where you can really know just how good the artifact is pretty quickly. I'm going to try to take the information I've learned and then try to condense it in a really digestible way so you can apply that to your game quickly. So let's get into it. Just so I don't cover anything, I'm going to go camless this video. So I just don't, when it comes to these, I always find a way to cover up something and then I see it and then I have to reshoot it. So I'm just going to camless it up for this one. Okay, so artifacts are broken into 5 different sections. So we got the flower, feather, hourglass, cup, and crown, or a hat. These are the 5 ones you're going to be looking out for. And then the primaries are going to change based on which one you have here. And once you start to understanding the primaries first, especially these 3 here, because this is when it gets kind of confusing, is these 3 right here. That's going to be a really key way to know exactly how good the artifact is quickly. So I think the most well-known thing currently is that all the flowers are always flat HP. All the feathers are flat attack. But then this is when it gets complicated over here. But when you really break it down, it's actually kind of simple. So the primary set for this guy, and then this is from the perspective, I think a lot of people are just looking mainly to do more damage. It really hasn't been too much of an issue. And then maybe optimize their support characters, but mainly it's more about damage, because in this game, there's really no tank. Survivability seems to be fine. It's more about like you just dodging, and then the flat stats or the natural sets you're getting seem to be enough. So this is primarily going to be about optimizing your attack. Yeah. For the main set on the hourglass, you have attack percentage, HP percentage, defense percentage, energy recharge percentage, and then elemental mastery flat. So for damage, it's actually really simple here, even though there's all these different options that you can have here. So HP percentage, elemental mastery, and you're like, okay, which one is it? You mean you have all these options, when in reality for damage, the only 2 is just attack percentage and elemental mastery. It's that simple for the hourglass. And then you're like, okay, for main characters, it's going to be attack percentage. I do like flat elemental mastery for your supports, because there's a lot of times, and breakpoints for elemental mastery, I'm not too sure yet, but it's just an option. So you can go attack percentage. I think that's the safest way for your supports and your main DPS. But something to keep in mind is like elemental mastery is nice for your supports, because a lot of times you're going to be switching your support into, there's a lot of characters that already have a status, like the slimes, for example, they're fire or they're electric. And a lot of times if you're switching in, that's the stat that's going to matter. They're the one proccing the interaction, and you don't need to worry about like setting it up with someone else and then switching into them. It's just they're going to switch out, boom, immediately proc overload or immediately proc electrocharge. And so elemental mastery is actually not a bad stat at all on supports for damage. So that covers hourglass. Next is going to be the main stats here for the cup. And the cup is attack percentage, HP percentage, defense percentage, elemental mastery flat, physical damage bonus percentage, and then elemental damage bonus percentage. So then here, there's all these different options, but now we can really narrow it down to there's just 3 main options here, kind of 4. So if we're talking main DPS, it's really going to come down to attack percentage, physical damage bonus percentage, and elemental damage bonus percentage. And the thing to know about, so that a really important thing about attack percentage is it's just the percentage of your base attack. And how you calculate your base attack is your weapon plus your character's base stats. So, and then when I'm saying your weapon here, I think it's important to distinguish is if we try to enhance it, we'll see how we have the base attack here and then the attack percentage. This attack percentage does not factor your base attack, even though it's part of the weapon. The only thing that matters is the flat attack stat here, and then also the character's base stats. And then it's very easy to see your character's base stats here when it comes to attack in, is right here. They actually break it down for you right there. So you get to see it. Now, every single attack modifier, like percentage you have on your artifacts, on your weapon, if you have an attack percentage on your weapon, are all based on your base attack. So your base attack is a very important stat. And so maxing your weapon, if you want to increase your DPS as fast and efficiently as possible, is just upgrade your weapon. It's literally that simple, because it's going to not only increase the stats of the weapon, but all of your artifacts get better. So base attack is very important. And also just leveling up your character too, that does that as well. So that's why I always prioritize doing like your weapon or doing your character first, because it's just that big of a difference versus trying to farm artifacts and get lucky on multiple layers of RNG. But that's a topic for another video. So why I say all that to say about attack percentage is how it's affected by your base attack is physical is to now compare it attack percentage to physical damage bonus percentage and elemental damage bonus percentage. So you look at one of those, you go to this guy. So you got like electro. So they're all specific percentage bonuses. So there's a whole bunch of layers of RNG. If you ever want to get a good cup, this probably has the biggest range here, because not only do you got to hit, like, for example, the right primary, but then the right set bonus for that right primary. Like if you're looking for a fire set and you need to get fire percentage damage. And so that's why, you know, doing these is definitely something to consider way down the line. But when you get to this point, you're going to really have to evaluate your character. Like, are you going to be doing mainly a type of damage? Like if you're Dialect, for example, you do a lot of fire damage. So probably a pyro set is going to be better. Yes, you'll have less attack, but the attack percentage is only based on your base attack percentage, whereas the elemental damage bonus is a modifier on all of your damage, even though it's a little bit less now because you chose to go with fire damage over, you chose to go with fire over increasing more attack on your stats. But that trade-off usually means more damage only if you do a ton of fire damage. So that is why it's important to really think about each character on how they actually play the game. Like, for example, Kaching could be used in a multitude of ways. You can use her in either pure physical damage, go for charged attack. And so you're trying to just boost up her physical damage, or you can go for like an AoE electric style build for Kaching. So you could be like, all right, well, I'll just go attack percentage here because she's split damage, or I want to be able to kind of use both. Or if you really want to min max and you just only want to kill bosses with her, then maybe go physical percent damage. It just really depends on how that character plays. But every single one of these is still good. And especially if the character is like really mixed, like they have one move that's all like a lot of physical, and then they have like an electro move. Like the character I'm thinking of is like Vishal, for example. If you're using her as a main DPS, you might want to consider just increasing her attack percentage because she's doing so much physical damage and electro damage. Whereas if you're using her as a support, then I think it's pretty clear that you're going to use the electro percentage boost for that, because pretty much all of her damage is electro. So all these are important to consider. But when you find that the character is more specific one way or another, those specific bonuses are usually going to net a DPS gain. So then lastly here, we have the hat. And the hat is attack percentage, HP percentage, defense percentage, crit rate percentage, crit damage percentage, and then a percentage of healing bonus. So obviously when it comes to increasing your damage, it's going to be between attack percentage, crit rate percentage, and crit damage. And so trying to figure out what's best here is really going to depend on how much stats you have on all of your characters. Because the important thing is there's going to be a ratio of diminishing returns on, well, first thing I should say is each stat is separate in its own thing. Like, for example, it's 1.0 is crit rate, and then 1.5% is crit, is attack percentage, and then double crit rate is, or my bad. Okay, so how they separate the stats is when you have a maxed out piece here, like let's say a max, for simplicity, let's talk about it only in a maxed out 4-star piece of gear. Crit rate, you get 23.2. Crit damage, you get double that for a level 16 piece. You get double the crit damage for the crit rate. So I would get 46.4. But whereas then the attack percentage is 34 point, be the same here. So 34.8, which is 1.5 times the 23.2. So they know that like they're not going to just give you the same amount of stats for each one, because all these stats are going to be evaluated differently. Like if you got 34.8 crit rate, that's obviously better than 34.8 crit damage. But for the same piece of gear, if you're getting 34.8 attack versus only 23.2 crit, there's actually something to talk about there. And then also same thing with crit damage. You got to have a ratio. And so the more you weight your stats one way or another, you go like all attack, all crit rate, all crit damage, especially when they're at this different ratio, there's going to be a point of diminishing returns of each piece of gear. So you want to make sure you optimize correctly when it comes to what you're picking. So for example, to keep it simple and not overcomplicate it when it comes to the math, the safest piece, like choice of gear to go with, I would say is crit rate. I think crit rate is going to be the thing that increases your stats overall the most. Then the second being attack. And then as we get super min-max and later down the line, you might want to start to consider maybe dropping a little crit rate for more crit damage and moving away from attack and going purely into crit rate and crit damage as you're trying to gear out your characters. But I think for now, especially where everyone's at, the best thing to look for is crit rate, in my opinion. So I would be looking for crit rate. That's going to be the best way to optimize your primary stats for these characters. And now that we have it broken down like that, where it's just very simple, when it comes to what you're choosing, it's just, I look at a feather, I'm looking for, we're already in secondary stats, and we'll cover that here in a second. Then the main thing here is just going to be, when it comes to primaries, these two are covered. And then over here, it's very simple. It's just, okay, attack percentage, elemental mastery. I look at the piece of gear and boom, I already know it's just 2 options. Here it's 3 options: attack percentage, physical damage bonus percentage, element, like a specific elemental type percentage. And then that's it. There's elemental mastery, but that's more for supports. And then over here, it's just going to be crit rate percentage, crit rate damage percentage, and attack percentage. And then most of the time, crit rate percentage. And then hopefully it has good substats. So that's going to be how I look at all these. And it's really not that bad when you break it down like that. It's just, now that we know exactly what primaries to look for, now we also want to look at what the best secondaries are. And for these guys, so let's just go with the flower. It's just going to be attack percentage, crit rate, and then crit damage. And those same ratios apply to the secondary stats that they do to the primaries. Like, for example, if you got crit rate, the same roll of crit rate would be double the amount for crit damage. And it would be 1.5 times the crit rate for attack. So if you look at this piece here, this piece is rolled to 16. You can already see that the crit rate rolled twice, because that's how they roll this. And then once you understand what the ranges are for, and you can look at that on the wiki, what the min-max amount of per roll is. And then you're trying to look for as many double, triple rolls on attack percentage and crit rate. And ideally, I would want to have as many actual damage secondaries as possible. Like I would want crit damage, attack percentage, crit rate, elemental mastery. That'd be amazing if we just replace this flat attack, worst case scenario kind of thing. This one has 2, and then at least it rolled on the crit rate once. So I would say that's solid for where we're at now, and especially with this set bonus. So then on the feather, same thing. We're looking for crit damage, crit rate, attack percentage, flat attack, elemental mastery, all those things that actually improve our damage, but then double downing on the rolls of crit damage, crit rate, and attack percentage. Anything you can get, really. This is so many levels of RNG that you're just taking as much as you can when it comes to these. Same thing here. Well, over here, since we're going attack percentage, we're just looking for crit rate, flat attack, crit damage. This is going to be one of those situations where you don't get the attack percentage. I can see in like God roll scenarios, if you went flat elemental mastery here, and then you got a ton of rolls on attack percentage, you can really get a ton of elemental mastery and a ton of attack with something like this. Over here, this one is a little interesting. And this, I think, as our gear gets better, the physical damage percentage and the elemental damage percentage bonuses are going to start to widen the gap from attack, because you cannot get a roll of physical damage percentage bonus or like a specific elemental type of damage percentage bonus on these secondaries. So then eventually, when you really start to roll, like my recommendation is AR45 is when you actually want to start really starting to roll for these pieces, because you're going to get a guaranteed 5-star AR45. You can still get attack percentage as a secondary, but not those other 2. So getting an electric, let's say I go electro damage bonus and see how this one has crit damage and attack percentage. I can see, but I also could have had an attack percentage here. And then if it rolled it a couple times, you're getting kind of best of both worlds there. It's a whole nother damage that you don't have the option of when you go with the attack percentage bonus. So just something to keep in mind there. And then lastly is going to be this one. Obviously, if you're choosing crit rate, crit damage, you won't get that as a secondary, but you're just, again, looking for crit rate, attack percentage, crit damage based on what you actually have, flat attack, and taking as many rolls as possible in those things. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover when it comes to this video. Hopefully, the main thing I wanted to make with this video is you can take, now when you get an artifact, 100%, like when I would get an artifact before, I would like, man, I hope it's good. I get attack percentage, I can put all of my resources into it, but it's like, is it really actually good, or is there something better in this primary spot? I don't know. So hopefully with this video, you can take that information, you can apply it to this. You can be able to quickly identify if you have a bad artifact or a good artifact. And with that, you guys have a good one. Peace.